students, NANS. He is the Managing Director of Hosbok Links and Development. He is currently the APC candidate for the Federal House of Representatives representing Amuodofin constituency. He is Comrade Ayodele Adewale. Comrade, welcome to Politico Politica.
Thank you for having me.
So today's topic is civic participation. What does civic participation really mean?
Well, it's about people taking ownership of their basic livelihood, be it political, be it social, be it security, communal, at all. It's all about people working harmoniously for a common good.
So let's look at your journey into civic participation. You were very active in the university. I mean, you fought for democracy, so to say. What made you really get involved at such an early age?
Well, I would say it was more of a scientific saying that necessity is the mother of invention. I have a friend in the UK, his name is Ayodele Adewale. He was studying physics. Now, a year before, Kayode would always come to the house, give me narrative of what was happening in school, how the military will come tear gas them in school, how a certain president of the union, they call him Bruno, Wale Arigbabu, was incarcerated and they were going to court. A year after I got into LASU, so he came to the laboratory. I remember I was on my lab coat, we were in the lab, carrying our practicals in 100 level, and he asked me to follow him to the parliament. So I followed him and I entered and he enlisted me. I remember Mr. Sarumi, Yemi Sarumi was speaker then. So SOB was addressing like a son. And I said, point of order, Mr. Speaker. And I said, order what? And I read the point of order from the standing row. And I told SOB to sit down. I was like, who had the effrontery? Because whenever SOB speak, it's like Lord Denning speaking. He was such an orator. So you now look back at who had the effrontery to tell him to sit down. And mind you, I came into LASU not as a very young person. I stayed some time at home. So looking at them, for me, they were like contemporaries, but SOB was older. So he looked at me and he caught interest. Then this day I was on campus again. I just saw students under the tree protesting. And I saw one man addressing them under the tree. And behold, it was Gani Fawemi.
Wow.
Then suddenly the police came and started shooting tear gas. So I was taking photographs and all of that. We went to the parliament, we had the procession and we were expelled. That was my turning point. We didn't have enough science equipment. And while I was in St. Gregory's, you know, it was one student through a whole lot of science equipment. But this is a university where you have about 10 students to one pipette and 3 test tubes and perhaps 2 chronicle flasks. So for me it was strange. And there are no stools. So you have to sit down on broken furniture. The waters weren't running, and the reagents were not in abundance. For me, it was, what's this?
So you say your disgust and anger.
I was angry. So
but the expulsion from school.
It's compounded now. We now carried out a protest. And the then Vice Chancellor, God bless his soul, Professor Akinseye, was now coming to cow us down. Everybody ran. I was the only one that faced him. And to my amazement, the second day, they ordered everything.
Everything.
They now deploy carpenters to come in and fix the lab, fix this, fix that. So I became a hero in the department.
But then what happened to the expulsion?
The expulsion, I was not the only one that was expelled. The whole member of the parliament, about 100 plus, were expelled. The reason was that we went on procession with our academic gown, challenging the state government then. You know, I think Buba Marwa was the governor of Lagos State then, and challenging Abacha. Then they published our names and expelled us. We refused. We locked up the gates. We continued our protest. Either on the 5th day, the protest was 5 days. On the 5th day, a new bulletin came out that we were reinstated. Ever since then, we didn't go back. And I became an activist.
And now what will you say, several years later, about the level of activism and civic participation in Nigeria?
There's a sharp difference. Activism in the military era was more of a collective resolve that is not propelled by materialistic inducement. How do I mean? People will wonder, even the policemen, the army, were always telling us that, what is pushing you people? You know, you see students moving and you see military checkpoints. The next thing you start doing is, ole, 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 go away, go away, go away. And they will crack their guns. Then I become president of LASU in my 200 level. They felt we were bribed, but we were not. The only thing that moved us was, one, we would discuss about issues, particularly at the student platform. We would discuss about state of the union. We would discuss about state of the campus and state of the nation. We had linkage with ASU and we had linkage with NLC. Now, after all of this discussion, the only thing that motivates us were the songs that we sang. And that at the end of the day, we took pictures with some of our heroes, like Dr. Beko, Chief Gani Fawemi, Tai Sholari, and the rest. Those were people that were looking up to Professor Wale Soyinka because people were now fighting in the same manner they were fighting the military. And in the military, we could throw bonfire, we could do so many things. But in a civilian administration, we ought to dialogue them more because we found no reason why we should dialogue with the military because we have dialogue in the past. It has broken down, they've lied to us, particularly the process towards handing over power from 1989 to 1992, 91 to 93, then all the way down like that until we got it in 1999.
So would you say dialogue, that social media, the internet, and even the media in general is a good place for civic participation?
Definitely. It is a good place and a broader frontier. Because in our time, if I needed to talk to somebody in Sokoto, I would have to travel from Lagos to Sokoto. Mind you, I don't speak the language. I don't have the money. What we do then is that we work with NURTW. So we went through a lot. So it afforded us an opportunity of meeting people from different states that are now relevant to us.
Now we want to hear from you. Go online, tweet at PP with Isabella, use the hashtag Politico Politica, and make your view count on our topic of the day, civic participation. You can also drop comments on Instagram and Facebook. The handle is Politico Politica. The show returns very shortly. Stay with us.
Politico Politica with Isabella Akinseye.
You're still tuned into Politico Politica with me, your host, Isabella Akinseye. Now it's time for our politics and more segments. So, Comrade, let's look at your journey into politics. I know you've already touched on it, but let's talk about mainstream politics. You've moved from student activism to mainstream politics. Why that?
If you look at the history of Africa, pre-independence of many nations, you found out that the founding fathers of this nation were student leaders. And because of the ideas and ideals that we have to enthrone an egalitarian society, regardless of various human strata that we might have found ourselves walking or what have you, that drive is still in you, that you need to come and play a role in governance. For me, I was fortunate, so I decided to run. And while running, another opponent heard about my CV, so they just dropped, and I went unopposed. And while I was there, I was called by Senator Tokunboh Afikuyomi to come become the Senior Special Assistant on Student, Youth, and Programs. And while I was there, I was introduced to Chief Anthony Enaoro of Blessed Memories by Mr. Wale Okuni and Dr. Beko.
You were very young when you decided to go into mainstream politics.
Matter.
Did you ever feel like you were looked down on, discriminated against?
I never saw age as a factor. The age of Methuselah cannot be compared with the wisdom of Solomon, so it is said. There is always a drive in you.
But let's look at the not so glamorous side. I mean, you've had attempts on your life and you've still not given up on politics. Why?
It's not the amount of time that you live that matter, but the value that you have put into life. Even while we were in school, we weren't scared about the bullet of the military. The only time you know that you've been hit is when the bullet hits you and you are down and you're not dead. Perhaps you have blisters. or you have wounds. Some of my friends have been killed while we're carrying out protests. We'll pick them up. We never left any of our comrades behind. We'll pick them up and continue to run. You know, they will throw tear gas, we'll throw it back. There was a time Daniel Kanu launched youth unnecessary demand for Abacha. SOB, Agumbiade, who is now the majority leader of Lagos House of Assembly and was last president, launched YEDA, youth unnecessary demand for Abiola, with one of Abiola's wife, Mrs. Dukmoni Tiri Abiola. We were moving from state to state, campus to campus. I remember that night, we left Lagos with our 1414 bus without a headlamp in the midnight. And we left for Ife, OAU, to have a meeting. And we're using torchlight in the midnight. And suddenly God came to our rescue. The moon was so bright, it was like day. We almost crashed into a tanker, petroleum tanker. And by the time we got to Ife, they had locked the gate. I came down. If you know the gate of Ife, it's a dwarf gate. It has sickles. I went to open the gate, and the bus came in, and the sickle almost entered my rib. Thank God that I could turn quickly, otherwise it would have brought out the whole of my lungs. And we went in. Sometimes we'll go, and the bus will even abandon us. We'll now start ragging in order to get money to come back to Lagos. At times we'll go in the far north, in the desert land, our bus will tumble and fall into a ravine. It happens to me once in Jos. And all of that. So
you're not scared of death?
The death doesn't come in. Death doesn't come in.
Let's talk about your involvement in the APC. Why the APC? I mean, you alluded to the fact that you started very early working for Asiwaju.
We were part and parcel of those who founded AD. We were not among those who wrote the manifesto, but we were foot soldiers. We were at the background, while our leaders were at the forefront. And we are children to him. We believe in their drive. We believe in their program. And if not for their program, perhaps Nigeria would have become another Somalia.
So would you consider Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to be your godfather?
Yes, he is.
So how do you balance godfatherism and activism?
You miss it again. You see, there's nothing wrong with godfatherism. Godfatherism is likened to a mentor. But in the Nigerian climb, that name has been bastardized. I'll take you to the Catholic belief. You cannot Christian a child. The bishop or whoever that will Christian your child will ask you, who is the godfather of this child? That means who is going to mentor this child? So it's a system of a mentor and a mentee. We all aspire.
But what happens when you go against your mentor and then the position that you thought was going to be yours is taken away and somebody else comes?
No, you can't go against your mentor because there's always room for discussion. It's not possible for you to go against it.
So are you saying you've never disagreed with Asiwaju on any issue?
No. Because issues are discussed. And the reason why they discuss with you or with me or with our kind or with our people is that they want you to learn. We don't have a classroom where we learn leadership. You learn through discussion, and you learn through practical attributes and systems in governance. There's a difference between political studies in school and political reality.
Then some will say they're just cloning another Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I'm just making...
And so what is wrong in that?
So where does the independence of mind, independence of thought come in?
The independence of thought is always there because I say we discuss. And while you are discussing with your leader and your mentor, he also picks from you. It's not omniscience. No, it's only God. But you see, when you are discussing, there are some things that you say they pick from and they'll just look at you this way. When you are discussing with an elder, suddenly he looks at you. He's speaking from your thought. At times they will say, okay, we agree with what you have said. Let us see how it runs out. And remember that the fact that you are discussing does not give you the temerity for you to be rude. Culture is there, respect is there.
But what happens when you decide, okay, I've had enough of this godfather, I've had enough of the mentoring, now I can stand on my own and be a godfather? What then happens?
You will go into destruction. You cannot stand on your own.
So are we saying that let's take Lagos as an example.
Look, a river that forgets its flow will dry off. A tree whose root is plugged out of the soil will die. You can't do that.
So are we saying that as long as Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu lives, he will always be that godfather of Lagos APC?
My people say, if the cheetah does not die, you cannot use his skin to prepare a drum. He will always be relevant, and will always go to learn from him. He's a fountain of knowledge. He's human. He might make mistakes. But within those mistakes, it is not for us to crucify him. It is for us to also come to discuss that, Daddy, sir, this path, why don't we see this way? And that's the dynamics that Asiwaju have lived with. Since 1999, come to think of it, how many governors of his time are still relevant? He has always been a maverick. He has always been very ingenious. He has always worked with the maxim, Yoruba maxim that says that Ọmọdé gbọ́n, àgbà gbọ́n, la fi dálẹ̀ Ifẹ̀. It is the knowledge of the youth and the old that we have used to create a town that is renowned for its longevity. Because time and space also changes. So you have to change with time and space, but not losing the fabric of truism.
Well, you're already going into our next segment, which is Project Lagos segment, and we'll let you also speak about your big plans for Amuodofin, having already been on ground. We'll take a quick breather on Politico Politica, but don't go anywhere because it promises to be a very engaging discussion. Welcome back to Politico Politica with me, your host, Isabella Akinseye. It's time for our Project Lagos segment. So why do you want to represent Amuodofin at the federal level?
We cannot allow experiments in our political development. As a local government chairman, as an executive person, I know the amount of development I brought in there. I met one doctor. I left 28 doctors. I met about 4 nurses. I left over 50 nurses. I employed over 840 non-pensionable workers. I put the name of Amuodofin on the global map. I was given an award in the United Nations headquarters in New York. We delivered 3,000 babies with 0 mortality rate. And we provided over 450,000 materials, writing materials for free for students.
So now there's a new chairman and some of your projects have been abandoned. I mean, I've been around Amuodofin in a short time and it doesn't sound like anything you're telling me right now. Will you say your projects were impractical or not sustainable?
Well, we have different vision. Remember that God said it pained him that he created man. Are we going to say God could not see the future and know what would happen? He also pained me that I allowed that character to be the chairman of the local government.
But this is a character that served under you, to use that term. Character.
Lucifer served under God. And he brought evil to this world.
So will you say that's an indictment on your leadership?
Are you going to indict God?
But
things happen.
If you give the example of Asiwaju and yourself, you're very obedient and loyal.
Yes.
So if you can have that, why didn't you have that with this character?
You cannot see the innermost of man. That does not mean that he's a huru yet. The struggle continues. The struggle for freedom, the struggle for good governance, and quality representation.
So in hindsight, would you have preferred a situation where you, quote and unquote, as a political godfather, install your own person that can continue with your master plan?
I would have loved a situation where the controllers of power will sanction and be more apt in weeding off people that refuse to follow the master plan.
So what's your master plan for Amuodofi?
My master plan is to see an independent Amuodofi that can grow on its own without depending on the state or the federal. All of this master thing for Amuo is there. We were abandoned by the federal. The state was bogged down with huge amount of work and less resources. The best I could do was think out of the box. I employed so many people to take care of sundry matters. I used the local government bylaw to institute the Green Club, the environmental rangers. Then I instituted them. The Green Club was made up of 50 youth. That concept was to train them in the vocation of horticulture. And they were meant to work for 4 hours a day and earn 20,000 naira as at 2018 up to 2014. Then the dollar was 170 naira. So you know how valuable 20,000 was. And we had lots of cleaners. Because we were quick to understand that the road is a depreciating asset. Immediately you put a road, it starts depreciating, especially asphalted roads. So we converted to interlocking. For the asphalted road, you need to clean the road regularly and desilt the drainages around the roads. So we did a lot of desilting. For health, we brought in free health and medical care. For the staffs, both political and administrative, training. We have this periodic training both in Nigeria and abroad. And we started e-governance. I remember I bought them iPad. Then BlackBerry was in fashion. I brought Bo 10 for people. And I brought vehicles. We were buying vehicles without getting a loan from a bank, using our pedigree with RT Briscoe. We bought over 36 Corolla of that same year, not second-hand. We went to Tata. We bought a very big truck for our environmental use. We bought bohits to open underground drainages. We bought swan boogies to open some of the drainages and what have you. We worked with the NYSC to give us doctors, nurses, engineers, and some of those core members we converted to teachers because we had to also employ an education consultant that prepared them and we pushed them into our various schools. We rehabilitated all the schools and built new schools. We built the biggest and finest parliament for our legislators and all of that. Amuodofi economy became the fastest growing local economy in Nigeria, as said by the CBN during the groundbreaking of the Festac ShopRite. That was why ShopRite came into Festac Town.
Will you say that all these projects are enough to assure you of victory at the polls? And will you say that this is a tip of what is to come if you're given that, you're given the mandate?
You can do your SWOT analysis in the community. You can go do it. And they will tell you they need me more now than ever to salvage the situation.
Or what can we expect to see in Amuodofi in the next 4 years?
What you are going to see is beyond legislative duties. Because what we need here now are extraordinary effort. Because we are going to use our credibility and our pedigree to attract investment and lure investors to come in, especially for the real estate.
So what happens when you have characters that do not align with this plan?
We are going to whip them in line.
How will you whip them in line?
Information. The Bible says, my people die because of knowledge. What is knowledge? Information. By the time you bring out what they earn every month to the governor of Lagos, to the ministry, look at what this guy earned. Look at what he has achieved this month. You just oppose it. You don't need any EFCC. The ministry will clamp down and make him work. And if he refuses to work, the assembly will call him to order. If he refuses, then the parliament there will weed him off.
So will you say that the people of Amuodofi are in for a time when there's an iron fist in the land?
It's not being iron-fisted. It's about policies and principles. You can't achieve if you have no policy and if you have no principle to drive your policy, the principle you need is for you to always put your hands on the plow, to cut out wastages, and to stick to the plan.
Can you give us a bit of a teaser or the tip of the iceberg on this Lagos Master Plan? We keep hearing about it.
The Lagos Master Plan is key more on infrastructure. It is only when you have quality infrastructure that you can grow your economy. Part of that infrastructure is power generation, good road network, good drainage system, you understand, and the human capital that can make this thing work. That will also bring in robust tourism that stagger our economy and make the funds go around. And of course, security.
So if this Lagos Master Plan is as detailed, going by what you've said, why would people in the APC want to go against this master plan?
People will always want to go because of personal aggrandizement. People will always want a shortcut to life. Look, if you have a conglomerate and you don't impose sanction, everybody has tendency of not wanting to work, but wanting to amass wealth. There's always a gatekeeper in every system. That gatekeeper is the most important person to make everybody walk in a positive direction.
Thank you, Comrade.
Thank you for having me.
Now we switch things up on a lighter note for our quick fire segment. It promises to be fun. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Politico Politica with me, your host, Isabella Akinseye. Now it's time for our quick fire segment. Comrade, are you ready?
Okay.
Number 1, the first female governor will emerge in the next elections. True or false?
I don't see the effort, so it's a false.
Okay. Number 2, the party that will dominate in 2019 is?
It's going to be slim, but it will be the APC.
Number 3, young people have what it takes to be leaders because?
Because they have vision, they have the drive, they have the energy, they have the passion. But do they have the endurance? That's the missing link. You have to endure the intrigues. You have to endure the pain. We don't have stupendous resources because our political drive now is based on financial resource, not ideology. So we need to build capacity of people in order for them to get in sync with your ideology that will not be predated on material gains.
Number 4, the funniest thing I've read about myself online is?
That I govern with the iron fist.
Number 5, the candidate I am most afraid of?
None.
Number 6, Nigerians will vote with their stomach or their brains?
Most Nigerians will vote with their stomach because of the hunger in the land.
Number 7, if not you, who?
Me.
Thank you, Comrade. That was supposed to be our quick fire segment, but when we touched on young people, you had a lot to say. I know it's something that's very dear to your heart. We still have our final words segment where you get to speak to our viewers, Nigerians, and indeed the world about the big plans that you have. Now it's time to see what's happening on the political landscape. Do enjoy. And it's almost a wrap on today's episode of Politico Politica with me, your host, Isabella Akinseye. Comrade, it's been a very educating, enlightening, and engaging discussion today. But for our final words segment, we want you to imagine that you were strapped maybe to an oxygen tank, because I think you would have a lot to say. So you get all the oxygen in your lungs, and you have that final breath. What will you say to Nigerians? What will you say to the world and people watching?
In finality, I would say that people should believe in themselves, set targets for themselves. There's a saying that if we try to reach the stars, we get to the moon. And I've often said that education is the only means that we can bail ourselves out from this quagmire that we find ourselves in Nigeria. If we want an orderly state, definitely our people must be well educated to understand the policies of government and how society is built. And every Nigerian must also know that government can't do it all, even if government is not coming to your salvation. Because of the kind of system that we have, let us all try to salvage ourselves by getting the right education. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade.
Thank you for having me.
What a show it has been. Educative, enlightening, and revolutionary, you might agree. And that's what we say here on Politico Politica. It's indeed politics for everyone. I'm your host, Isabella Akinseye, reminding you to play your part and stay woke.